Javier's book report was about a book called How the Garcia Girls Lost Their Accents. And it's quite interesting in terms of many areas that have to do with immigration, that have to do with identity, cultural identity. And people are moving around a lot these days in the world. Well, not now in pandemic, but people are moving to other countries a lot. So how much of their cultural essence still remains with them? That's one interesting concept, right? So Javier, basically the question has to do with the title. Why and how do these Garcia girls lose their accent, and what's the connotation of losing your accent according to what you read in the book? Why, how, and what's the effect of losing the accent?
Well, um, it comes to my mind situations in the book that related to two of the four sisters who are the main characters on the book. Um, well, this one of these is the oldest sister, Carla. She was she's the oldest sister, so she was the one who had more exposure and more practice with the mother tongue, which was Spanish in Dominican Republic. So, and the other one is Yolanda, who's the third child, and the one who is the alter ego of the author of the book. And as well in the book, she became a poet and a writer, as same as the author. So maybe this thing of this clash of culture, this loss of something and the gain of something different from the different culture. I would say that in this case was the interaction with the family rather than the opportunities or maybe the language itself. For example, Carla, at the beginning of the book, in the first chapters, she goes to visit her family in Dominican Republic, and the whole family is able to talk with her in English, but she's not able to remember certain words, which is the title of the first chapter, which is called Antojos. So thank you, Mister. Well, the first chapter is called Antojos, and in one part of the book, they were talking about a fruit, which is the guava there in Dominican Republic, and Carla was not able to recall this word, and it made a clash with the family where they told her, "Oh, our little girl is losing her mother tongue. She's forgetting her roots and things like that." To me, in that point, the thing was that the culturalization of the English language, in which Carla was focusing on learning the new language and acquiring the culture and setting new roots, may gave led into a clash with her family. And the thing with Yolanda, the writer, is that she states I think it's around, it's like in the middle of the book, in the second part of the book, where the writer developed the teenage years of the Garcia girls and the college time of them that they had in the States. And the things that Carla, she relied a lot on her Spanish mother tongue, but she states that in order to develop her her gift, her talent, the creative talent of writing and things like that, she needed to absorb so much English language that she felt that she was not um, a Dominican girl who was in the U.S. Rather, she felt like she was a U.S. girl who had a Dominican background. That now it's a more imperative um, language, the English language, as she had to learn and she had to read, and or not she had to, she wanted to, she experienced a lot of the English language in order to develop her skill the thing she loved, which was writing poetry, and well, and the book was writing poetry, and for the author, it's to write novels and as well poetry at her beginnings. So I will say yes that the the cultural clash was with the family and with themselves in sort of their identity, while recognizing themselves with both languages.
Right. Interesting topic. I mean, I'm in the field of literature, but also on phonetics, pronunciation, and there's more emphasis now on the concept that accent is transmitting or conveying your cultural identity. Not only is it terms of it's about how you pronounce individual segmental or phonemes, right? But it's also about you with the accent, you're also transmitting who you are, you're revealing your background, you are um, bringing up your ancestors, right, with you. So it's an interesting idea. I've got family in Sweden, and that's a topic for them, that how less Chilean their children are. Less Chilean because they don't have the accent. They rarely come or want to come to Chile to visit because their roots are in a different country. So it's families that go abroad and live in a different country essentially have a complex situation because the parents want to remain as Chilean as possible, or whatever the country of origin is. But their children have a say as well, have an opinion if they want to connect with parents' mother country, or if we want to because they are living their lives in a foreign country. So how can you live in a foreign country and not develop certain, ties? So Javier's book report tapped on this concept, and I think it's very important to remember this because um, the paradigm has changed. Now we're discussing not just communicative competences, but intercultural or cultural communicative competences. So it's something to remember that whenever you speak, you are revealing part of cultural elements that are part of you. And sometimes when you speak to someone, even if you're using the same language as a vehicle, which is maybe English, if the speaker is from another country, there's something missing in the conversation, and that's something you need to keep in mind. Very, very interesting. I'm very interested in topics like this. I haven't researched, I read a lot when I was doing my master because of the books. One of the books that I read while I was doing the master was this one, and others from, not just Latin American cultures, but also Chinese, Asian cultures, uh, getting in contact with United States as a country, as a host country. Thank you, Javier. Thank you very much. Maybe later we can continue discussing the topic because it's something very, very interesting. But now we have another group, right? We have a group that's giving a book report today. Thank you very much again, Javier. And
Thank you too, Mr.
Alrighty, thanks. And I would like to first say good morning to the Catherine, Visania, Maria Ignacia, Carla, Fernando Danivia, Cherry, Camila Quesada, Barbara Diaz. And then I would like to welcome the group that's giving their book report today to try, the technical stuff, if you can share or not your screen. Okay. And surprise us with the book report that you have for today. What is it? Anyway. Is it
Their
their eyes
eyes
were
were
watching?
watching God. Yes.
Excellent. Thank you, Consuelo.
Good morning, teacher. I sent you
Morning.
the PPT
Ah,
presentation to your email, so you
okay.
can check it out.
All right.
Yes.
With I'm a little bit surprised. Sorry, because I'm not prepared for that. What is it? The institutional email?
Yes.
Okay. The the funny part is that my connection is not really good because I connected with my cell phone and I live in a rural area. So I'm sorry if there's if it's a little bit slow, but I think we managed, right, to do it last time.
Yes.
Yes, okay. I try to be very attentive, watchful to your instructions. So okay, I'm going to stop sharing this, and the PowerPoint is opening, and I think I'm ready now to start sharing. It doesn't have any sound, right? So
No.
okay, so are you seeing this?
Yes.
Excellent. I think I can. Fernanda, that doesn't have a tilde, right?
No. My name
Okay.
doesn't have.
All right. So I think I can identify your voices quite well. So there's no need
Mhm.
for you to say my name is. Okay. So whenever you want.
Okay. So the book report for today is their eyes were watching God, and this is a book written by Sarah Neil Hurston, and we are going to present it Carla, Consuelo, Fernando Ordanibia, and I, Fernanda Diaz. The table contemplates the summary of the plot, the historical context, characters, setting, narrator, point of view, themes, symbolisms, and also the literary devices.
So to start with, the author of this novel is Sarah Neil Hurston, who was born on January the 7th in Notasulga, Alabama. She was an outstanding writer and anthropologist. Hurston's novels, stories, and plays are often related to African American life in the South. Sora dedicated her life to study Black culture, and as an author, Hurston started publishing short stories as early as 1920. Unfortunately, her work was ignored by the mainstream literacy audience for years. However, she got famous among African Americans. It is worth stressing that Hurston was not only a writer, but she also dedicated her life to educating others about arts. Although Hurston frequently received praise for her works, she was often underpaid. Therefore, she remained in poverty. Hurston died of heart disease on January the 28th in 1960. Although Hurston's work was not widely known during her life, in death, she ranks among the best writers of the 20th century, influencing many other writers worldwide. Can you change the slide, please? Thank you. Now moving on to the summary of the plot. In the introduction, Jenny was coming back home from the Everglades, and the neighbors wondered why she was not with her husband. Phoebe, her best friend, visited her to know how she was, and Jenny tells her her life story. You can change the slide, please. Can you change the slide? Thank you. In the rising action, Jenny says that she was raised by her grandmother Nanny, who made her get married to a local potato farmer, Logan Killix. She was a slave in the past and was robbed by the plantation master, just like Jenny's mother, Leafy, who was robbed by a school teacher at the age of 17. Leafy gave birth to Jenny and ran away. A year after, Jenny got married to Logan. A year after Jenny got married to Logan, she met Joe Starks, who promised her a better life. So Jenny leaves Logan and runs away with Joe. Joe Starks was very ambitious and a black leader. He opened a store and a post office and was elected as a mayor. Nevertheless, he was an awful husband. He beat Jenny and made her life miserable. After 20 years of marriage, Joe and Jenny walked apart. Then Joe got sick and died, which made Jenny feel free and peaceful. After Joe's death, Jenny met a younger and poorer man who was Tea Cake. They fell in love, got married, and moved to the Everglades. Unfortunately, a hurricane hit the city, and during the storm, Tea Cake tried to save Jenny from a rabbit dog, but he was bitten by him. Because of this, in the climax, Tea Cake started to act very crazy and tried to shoot Jenny. So she was forced to shoot him first to save her own life. After his funeral, Jenny decides to go back to Eatonville. Then, in the resolution of the novel, she is telling her life story to Phoebe, her best friend, saying that she finally feels at peace with her life. You can change the slide now. Thank you.
Moving on to the historical context. You can change the slide, please? Okay, thank you. So, Sarah Neale Hurston wrote Their Eyes Were Watching God during a very difficult time for the African American. She wrote this book during the era of the Harlem Renaissance. This era was named as this because it was based in the city of Harlem, New York. So, this era was a result of the white supremacy being made in the South, and as a result, many Blacks came up to the city for work, and this caused a boom in African American culture. There was the beginning of the emerging Black arts and entertainment because the Harlem Opera House started playing Black works such as the Three Plays for a Negro Theater. And another important event in Black entertainment was the foundation of The Voice. This was the first newspaper of the new Black movement. It was mainly a political newspaper, but also contained poetry and reviews of books. So it was a very difficult time because there was the Great Depression, who put millions of Americans out of work. And this is said that it was the worst economical times in American history. You can change the slide, please. Thank you.
We cannot hear.
It's Carla's
Hear me now?
turn, and I think her microphone is not working.
Hello, can you hear me
Now
now?
can we hear you?
Yes. Okay.
Yes. Okay, sorry.
All right.
Okay, so the first character that we have is Jenny May Crawford, and she's the protagonist of the story, and she has mixed race origins, and she's also the object of much attention for her black skin and physical beauty. She is headstrong, determined to achieve fulfillment on her quest for independence, spiritual nourishment, and self expression. Then we have Tea Cake. He is Jenny's third husband and her only true love throughout the novel. He is 12 years younger than Jenny, and he is from a lower social status. He treats Jenny with far more respect and attention than the other husband she had. However, all is not perfect in their marriage because T-Cake lies and once beats Jenny. The third character is Joe Starks. He's handsome, wealthy, and ambitious. He's her second husband, and meeting Joe Starks prompts Jenny to leave her first husband, Logan Killicks. Although Joe initially flatters Jenny by focusing on and complimenting her beauty, he ends up demoralizing her, treating her as an object. And he also wants to desire his like the control of upon her and power rather than as a partner of equal standing in the relationship. Then we have Logan Killicks. He's a wealthy farmer and landowner. He's her first husband, and their marriage was arranged by Jenny's grandmother because she desires financial security and social status for Jenny. And Logan forcefully demands that Jenny works alongside with him on the field and making her feel dehumanized and disrespected. Jenny ends up leaving Logan for Joe Starks. Then we have Nanny Crawford. She is Jenny's grandmother. She is a former slave, and it is characterized by traditional perceptions about gender and marriage. She focuses on the importance of financial security for women, especially Black women, and she sees this goal possible only through marriage and by selecting a husband. Although Nanny only wishes the best for her granddaughter, Jenny feels frustration at various points throughout the novel for the limitation that Nanny's traditional worldviews and have imposed upon her life and her particular desire of seeking independence and freedom. Then we have Livy Crawford. She's Jenny's mother, whom Jenny never knew. She's the daughter of Nanny and Nanny's slave master. This master raped Nanny just before the end of the Civil War. And also, Livy is raped by her teacher, getting pregnant, and then like she started drinking every night preceding Jenny's birth. And finally, she runs away after giving birth to her and leaving Nanny to take care of Jenny. And the last main character that we have is Phoebe Watson. She's Johnny's closest friend in Eatonville and repeatedly defends Jenny against the gossip of the townspeople. And she is the character who listens to Jenny telling her story, and in this way is the character in the novel that most actively recognizes Jenny's newfound capacity for self-expression. You can change the slide, please.
Moving into the setting of Their Eyes Were Watching God changes twice throughout the book, and each time the setting changes, so does Jenny. Within the novel, there are two settings that strictly construct each other. The first one is Eatonville, and she feels oppressed there, whereas moving to the muck, she feels free and natural. So in the beginning of Their Eyes Were Watching God, Jenny met a man named Joe Starks, or Jody, and it's immediately attracted to him because he seems confident, determined, and free. And Jody persuades her to run away with him, and they end up in Eatonville, Florida. And Eatonville, Florida is Florida's pioneer African American town. So there lies a community possessing great historical significance and a legacy of racial progress and ultimate success. So Eatonville, Florida is the oldest Black community incorporated into the United States. And this happened during 1990, sorry, 19 and ah, um, 1887. Thanks. And it is the first town that was successfully established by the African American community, freedmen. So the founding of this town is stand as an enormous achievement for once enslaved Black men and women throughout the United States. Next slide, please. The Everglades. The Mac or the Everglades, Janie feels her natural self. She can find herself there and living a life with Tea Cake, where TK plays the banjo every night so she can listen to him. And there she feels that she found herself. Ginny feels boundless and fulfilled because she does whatever she wants with the man she loves. And she learns to shoot a gun that finally takes TK's life. They are very happy in the Mac or Everglades. But then they come back to, she comes back to Eatonville, where she found, she reconnect with her past life. Next slide, please.
Okay, so in relation to the narrator, their eyes were watching God is constructed with a third person point of view. However, the novel appears in a framed structure while Jenny Crawford, who is the protagonist of the novel, tell her story about to Phoebe Watson, her friend. Although Jenny is telling Phoebe her story, she's not the narrator, but rather someone abstract from her who emerges as an omniscient speaker. The narrator appears as omniscient due to the fact that she gives an insight into the character's ideas, emotions, and motives. For example, the narrator comments, it was a weapon against her strength, and if it turned out of no significance, still it was a hope that she might fall to her level someday. Through this comment, the narrator gives the audience an insight about Jenny's feelings. By constructing the novel this way, the author, Zora Neale Hurston, achieves leading the audience to develop their own perspective about the characters' personalities and motives.
Now, moving on to the point of view of this novel, as Carla said, their eyes were watching God is told from an omniscient third-person narrator, which means that the narrator has access to the lives of each character. He does not speak in the informal Southern dialect like Jenny and the other characters. However, the novel is structured as if Jenny is telling her life story to Phoebe, creating in the narrator an abstraction of Jenny. This narrator describes Jenny's deepest emotions. For example, when Joe dies and Jenny does not feel sad, the narrator explains that Jenny sent her face to Joe's funeral and herself went rollicking with the springtime across the world, which means that Jenny was happy about her husband's death. For this reason, this narrator has privileged access to the inner life Jenny cannot expose with everyone.
moving on to the themes, you can change the slide, please. Okay. The first theme is language, speech, and silence. So this book is often celebrated because Houston used a very unique language. Particularly, she mastered the Southern Black dialect. And through this novel, she utilized an interesting narrative structure, and the characters speak as very likely a few others in American literature. And they have a distinctive grammar, vocabulary, and tone. The second theme is power and conquest as mean to fulfillment. So Jenny struggles to maintain a place for herself by having a spiritual journey towards love and self-awareness. And on the other hand, Jody attempts he wants to fulfill through the exertion of power. So he tries to control everyone and everything around him. And he exercised by doing so his authority, hoping to subordinate his environment to his will. And also, he works under the illusion that he can control the world around him. And by doing that, he will feel a profound fulfillment. You can change, please. The third theme is love and relationships versus independence. As this book is the story of how Janie achieves a strong sense of and comes to appreciate her independence. But there is gender differences that Houston exposed, and this requires that men and women provide each other things that they need, but they do not possess. And Janie views fulfilling the relationships as reciprocal and based on mutual respect. And this is demonstrated in her last relationship with Tea Cake, which elevates Janie into an equality and noticeable absent from her marriage that he had previously. And the last theme is humanity versus nature. So this book illustrates how no human pursuits for love, money, or self-worth and can stand against God or the forces of nature. For instance, many of the characters operate under the assumption that they can control everything around them, that they have power. And for instance, Jody plays God after his appointment as major, and Tea Cakes, on the other hand, refuses to believe that the impediment storm is a reason to abandon a full day's wages. Moreover, Janie marries hastily in pursuit of fulfillment, her girlhood dream of a perfect union. You can change the slide, please.
And now the symbols of the story are, next slide, thank you. The mules are used to represent the role of the women in the world and then changes to represent Jody. Nanny says that the nigger woman is the mule of the world, and she explained to Jenny that throughout the story, African American women have to be forced to work similar to mules. And this comes true when Jenny marries Logan Killicks, and it's forced to do many chores and it's treated like a mule. Next, please. The horizon. The horizon represents hopes and dreams in the novel. After Jody's death, Jenny begins to resent Nanny because she feels that she has been unfairly sheltered and unable to experience the world as she wanted. And Nanny says, Jody says that Jenny says that Jody had taken the biggest thing God ever made, the horizon. For no matter how far a person can go, the horizon is still beyond you, and what Jody had taken from her is the horizon. And the horizon also represents that at the very end of the novel, when Jenny is self-fulfilled, she feels that she has reached the horizon and she has gone on a journey and returned. She was content with her life and no longer or treated like a mule and needed to reach the horizon. So she feels that she has reached the horizon at the end of the novel. The next slide, please. Pear trees represent the nature and how Jenny wants to connect with her natural self. The pear itself is very feminine because it represents the woman's body and the woman's body figure. And she compares herself and her life to his tree to show her to show her connection to with the nature. Next, please. The hair. Jenny's hair represents her freedom in the novel, and Jody always forced her to wear her hair wrapped up in a ring, making her feel unnatural and oppressed. So the hair is really important in this novel because it represents the freedom of Jenny. Next, thank you. And the literary devices that we could identify in this novel were metaphor, and the first one is ships at distance have every man's wish on board. This represents that Hurston is using the idea of a ship out of the horizon represents a man's dream. Sometimes it's come to the harbor, and other times it says that they are out on the horizon to eventually sail away. Sail away. And Simil, it says that during the novel that feels just like underneath a pigeon's wing next to my face. Here, tea cake is comparing Jenny's hair to the underside of the dove's wing because of how soft they both are, and that's why tea cake cannot keep his hand out of Jenny's hair because he feels that her hair is really soft. And sensory imagery says that then Joe Stark realized all the meaning of his vanity bled like a flood. We all can relate to this statement because we all have bleed and we have seen that floods looks like. So when you read bled like a flood, we can almost see that Joe Stark's vanity just rushing away from him. Next, please. And here is a quote from Zora Neale Hurston from this book that says that there are years that ask questions and years that answers. And I found that this quote was really representative with Jenny's life because she married 3 times and she learned a lot from each marriage. And at the end of the story, she got the answers of her life. That was our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. As usual, let us let us think in this topic, and maybe a member of the audience may have a question. Feel free, please, to ask any questions to this group, for this is a very, very interesting book, quite contemporary in terms of the concepts, issues that it addresses. Okay, I have a question. Okay, let me shoot first. Okay. So I think this book, it's very relevant these days. And also it helps us or allows us to explore a very unique moment in American history. But it's not that we can get stuck in that historical moment and not make some connections with what we're dealing with today. So one of my questions is, how do you relate to the book as a reader? After reading the book, what kind of connections can you make with yourself, with your own experiences? Did it touch anything in your insight? Did it make any sense to you? Was it meaningful? Was it not?
From my perspective, the book was really meaningful to me because during that time, the late 20s, there was a social movement for from the African American community, but also there was the fight for the women right. So there was a fight for the African American community and also a right from the women from the African American community for to arouse the feminism among the community. So that I can relate to that because nowadays we are all fight for women's right, and during that time it was so difficult because being part of the African American community was difficult because of the racism, and indeed was more deeper if you were a woman. So I think I can feel represented by Jenny because she wanted to be free. She wanted to have control of her own life, and now it's what we are fighting for women's rights.
Right, very, very interesting, Fernanda, the connection with the historical one that you were referring to. Now, one of the criticisms made to this book by some authors is that it actually focuses on exploring the love and feminism, right, from the perspective of Jenny, but it doesn't fully explore racism. Do you think it doesn't actually, or it just indirectly covers racism and highlights other elements of growth in the main character?
I have read that this book is mainly focused on the difference between the African American community among them, and not with white people and the African American community, nor among them. So, for example, there were like fights between people who was with darker colored skin and with brighter colored skin, but inside the African American community. So I think this book is not really focused on racism, nor on the differences between the African American community.
Thank you so much, Fernanda. And there's a
Professor.
microphone open. Is it Consuelo?
No, mine.
Carla? Carla,
Yes.
what do you think about that? Because somehow it's the book is explained from the perspective of that Harlem Renaissance writers explored this concept of the old version, the old Negro, the old version of the African American, and now the new one. So this book explores. Do you think the new version of this new Negro, as compared, opposed to the old concept of the Negro in terms of slavery, in terms of discrimination and segregation? Is it
Well,
focusing? Yes, go on, please.
I well, I have a comment on the last question you did. It was that it was a part in which the story was like trying to mention this white supremacy on this in Jenny her and her life, like when her grandmother saw that Jenny was kissing a boy, she felt that that was the moment that she need sorry, that she need a husband. Like she has this idea because of like her whole life. During her whole life, she has been working with I don't know, with their masters. So she thinks that if her granddaughter marries rich man, she's going to have, like, I don't know, a good life, in a financial um I I don't know how to explain it, but but she feels that her daughter is going to be okay and very happy if she marries. As she's ready to kiss a boy, for example, she's ready to have a husband. And in this part, it is like it can be seen and understood that this Negro, I don't know, it is the time when the society like sees the this. I am sorry, cannot
That's all right.
clarify
Don't
that.
worry.
Yes.
Don't worry. Don't worry. In the meantime, Fernanda has her hand raised. So maybe Fernanda, you can take up from where Carol left, or you can develop your own answer. All right?
Yes,
Yes, go on, please.
I say something that really called my attention about this book, that it is the sense of power that men had during those times. And I want to address this because it really called my attention that Jamie's grandmother was raped as well as her daughter. And her daughter was raped by a white teacher. So in this case, you can see the sense of power that some men had to women. In this case of to her grandmother and her mother, and also the same sense of power that had in this case Logan, because he wanted to feel powered by his actions. He was named a mayor, and this increased his own ambition, and this has a repercussion on the stereotypes that women had to fulfill during those times. And it was very interesting to see that Janie wanted to achieve her own perspective, and she could do so after several marriages to, in the final end, understand that she really preferred her own independence. So it is kind of a struggle that it is pursued during this story.
Exactly. A struggle for self-determination, for self-worth as a woman, not depending on the husband, the rich husband, providing for her to become a valuable person, right? Consuelos has her
Yes,
hand raised.
Yes,
Thank you, Fernanda.
yes.
I would also like to say that, I mean, I would like to talk about Jenny's feelings. I realized that, I mean, during we were investigating about this novel, I realized that at first she was very aware of others' opinions, so she felt very limited, uh, and she used to diminish herself and her potential. And during the novel, she discovers that by listening to her mind and her uh, like inner guidance, she felt more powerful, and without fears and criticisms of others. And I felt very identified with this part because uh, I have paid attention to the same things in my past, to others' opinions and what other people said used to say about me. Uh, but then I realized that that is not is not like healthy for my mind. So that is why I felt identified with this character.
It's a journey that I think everyone has to take, right? And then after some point, we all learn that we need to pay more attention to what we think and not so much to other people's opinions, right? Carla, you have your raised hand?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. According to, well, the part that it can be understood as this change in the last Negro society and the actual one in the novel, it starts when this with townspeople start gossip why Jenny came back to the city alone without a husband. And yeah, that is the point when you can see that even though she is a woman that increases her potential, her security, her independence, you can also see that these people, that society is also trying to talk about her, like say bad things about her, gossip, and try to create this wrong idea that women have to be with their husbands during her whole life. They cannot understand that Jani have these three husbands and what happened to her. And the only person that believes on her is her best friend, Phoebe. So yeah, I mean, according to what Consuelo says, I think that this novel can touch every woman's like life, because we all can feel represented for her wishes to have independence and fulfillment with what she has done during her whole life. Uh, so, in my case, I have been raised thinking that I need to study, I need to complete some things in my life in order to empower myself and in order to control my own life, instead of having being in control of a man, for example. And this novel also touches this African American society, because it is incredible that the author could create this novel in a period of time when this was not like a theme, like a topic, and it was more related to racism, as you mentioned. and and that is why there are some critics against this novel, because as it doesn't touches the racism and everything, people think that that is the only important topic to talk about in the African American communities, but that is not true. And the author try to explain that women also have this oppression in the community, uh, far more than being black. They have this oppression for being women in a black community.
It is very, very important what you were saying, all the points you mentioned that to do with this gender oppression that was not being fully covered, because the agenda was connected more with racism at the time, right? Yes, Fernanda, you have your hand raised, and then Consuelo.
Yes, in the same line as Carla was saying, I want to add that at the end of the novel, Jenny kill and shot Tea Cake and kills him. And she go to a jury, and the white judge set her free. But her friends and the African American community judge her and criticize her action that was in self-defense. So this novel is beyond the racism and wants to evidence that inside the African American communities there are more than like disparities that just racism. And so here we can evidence that a white jury set Jenny free, and her community judged her for her action. So that makes me think that there are more things that just racism inside the community.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Consuelo, and then Fernanda.
Yes, I just wanted to say something about what Fernando Danibia said regarding the power that men had in those times. It calls my attention that Jenny was always feeling controlled by men because the society used to say that, I think. So I can't imagine myself living a life like that, like being controlled by men. I cannot feel that way. So I realized reading the book, I mean the investigating about the novel, um, that at the end of the book, in the end of the book, she realized that she was feeling happier just being with herself. She didn't need someone to give her economical stability or to be with someone who make her happier. So I really like the part in which she says like I'm in peace with myself, and she was just with her friend Phoebe. So that's it. I just wanted to highlight it, that part that caught my attention.
Thank you so much, Consuelo. Thank you for the personal connection, and also to the connection with this sorority concept, because basically it's Phoebe, the one who on which Jenny can rely on, right, to tell her what's going on with her. Fernanda.
Yes, I wanted to address something that came to my mind after hearing my classmates' opinion. I think that it is very important that we can have the opportunity to read a book that was written like several years ago, and still we can have like our own conclusions and have our own connections with today, with the present, with our own I forgot the word, with our own experiences, because sometimes when we were a child, sometimes we have the conception that we needed to have like a good man for life, that we were going to be valued only if we were with a man, and this happened uh, when Janie came back to her village, and everyone was thinking, okay, why isn't she with his husband? And this was seen as like a bad consumption, instead of wondering, okay, maybe something bad happened to her, but it was more important that she wasn't without a man. And this make us realize that we as women have our own power, and we are okay if we decide or if we are not with the companion of a man.
Right, the self-empowered idea. And I'm very glad that you're making these connections because when you read a book and you start thinking about the way you can relate to it, and this sort of conversation that you're having with the author or with the ideas that the author is sort of reflecting upon, you may feel that there are some elements that could apply to yourself. So I'm very glad that these ideas come through your analysis and through your connection to it. Carla, I don't know if you have your hand raised or, I
Yes,
mean, okay,
I
go on,
want to
please.
say a short comment about this novel that even though this is novel for for everyone, but basically it's more focused on Black community. It is important to mention that Janice is not completely black. Her skin is not completely black. So people in the community discriminate her because she is she has this mixed race. So yeah, there we can see that the discrimination. Like even though she is part of the community, they also discriminate her because of her skin, and they think that maybe she has these three husbands because of her skin. She have these opportunities because of her skin. She was free because of her skin color. So yeah, that was the only thing that I wanted to say.
Very, very good, very important, because we don't have that particular view on race according to the color of skin. I mean, I'm just saying in general, we don't see that someone who's darker maybe has a specific area in the social classes, and someone who has a lighter skin may be considered in a different way. I think in the old days, when I was younger, um, people tend to look at others in terms of having or not some racial features, some indigenous racial features, or indigenous last names, particularly Mapuche. And there was some sort of there was a very strong discrimination decades ago, because the hair, because of the height of right of the person. So that was some sort of ideas that are I'm glad are changing these days, right? Fernanda, I think you had your hand raised.
Yes, I want to add something to that because
Yes, please.
I don't know, but I'm Mapuche. I'm part of the Mapuche community, and I was discriminated by the Mapuche community when I applied to the CONADI, that is the community here in Chile. So I was discriminated at first because of my color skin, because my appearance, because I have my hair like I'm quite blonde. And I was discriminated at first, and then they accept my sorry
Application.
my yes, my application. But at first I was discriminated by the community, and that was sad for me because I'm descendant and I'm the fourth generation of Mapuche, and at first I was discriminated because of my skin color.
Yeah,
And
too white and too blonde.
yes, the people also told me that, are you really Mapuche? And I don't have the language. I'm not really feel part of the community, but in my my blood is Mapuche, and I'm proud of that. Even though I not have the costume, the I'm not inside the culture, but I'm part of that, and people always ask me if I'm really Mapuche, and that it makes me feel like uncomfortable sometimes. And I also wanted to add that I read a criticism for this book, that says that this novel was make white people laugh because of the phonetic that was used on the novel, and that was a criticism for the author because African American community thought that they had like an opponent on among them that was Hurston, and they think that they thought that she had wrote this book to make white people laugh, and she ensured that it was not for that reason that she used this phonetic accent. It was for represent the African American community.
Great point. The African American vernacular, also called by some Ebonics, is a very distinctive dialectal English with its own origins, with its own linguistic growth. So it's a great aspect because this book and also many other books have that particular choices made by the author that they are including the dialectal differences. And that it is attaching more the story to the place where the action takes place, right? I think Carla had hand raised first, and then Fernanda.
Yeah, but it was a comment in relation to this discrimination inside a certain community, and I write this comment on the chat. Like there is a movie about referring to that topic, and it is very interesting.
Lovely. I really love suggestions related to movie and music. I always accept them, and I always watch or listen to the suggestions. Thank you so much, Carla. And Fernanda?
Yes,
Fernanda
I
Rodriguez,
wanted to
yes.
say something that really called my attention about what Fernanda just said, because sometimes there are assumptions that or biases that people take just because of the color of our skin. I remember that when I was a child and I was in school, one mother of a classmate said to my mom that I was Mapuche, that I should apply to the scholarships just because for the color of my skin and because my last name was kind of weird. And it is something that we should take into consideration before say something, because we are not just what we represent physically. We are more than that. We have heritage, we have history, and that is very important to realize.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Things are changing through times. I think it was an insult before, when I was younger, to have anything to do with any indigenous people, not only Mapuche, but having some sort of facial features connected with indigenous peoples in general. Nowadays, I think these may be changing as we can see, for example, in social manifestations, people carrying a Mapuche flag that sometimes goes beyond representing maybe the concept of the Mapuche, but also the idea of democratic autonomy of the people to make decisions, right, and not just politicians making decisions for the people. But people are relating more and more to indigenous peoples or to Mapuche. And so the perception is changing, but I totally agree that it's quite important to be sensitive, to be careful with addressing this as in general, we have different perceptions. We're unique, right? We're so humans are so imperfectly perfect. So we have our own reality according to the way we perceive it. So it's very important to be quite respectful, right? I have to confess that I read this book 2 years ago. Yes, 2 years ago. I hadn't read it before, even though I knew of the importance of this author in the Roaring Twenties, or the specifically the Harlem Renaissance. And I'm really in depth with reading more authors from the Harlem Renaissance period. I'm very fond and very familiar with music, with musicians from that particular era, but not so much writers. So I I really loved this book, and I really loved the way you treated all the aspects that have to do with women's empowerment, the gender discrimination. What's the other one that I took notes of? Feminism, because it's like a road trip of the main character discovering herself and discovering that her self-worth does not depend on the husbands that she get married with, but on her own self-discovery, right? So this is a great point in this book that I think it's very important to remember, and hopefully the rest of the audience can get excited about this topic and maybe read it later whenever they have time. Thank you very much. It's yeah.
Just a comment, you should watch the movie that is performed by Halle Berry. That is a really famous actress.
I saw the picture. You used the picture
Yes.
when you were referring to the hair.
Yes.
And the movie is called essentially the same.
Yes.
Okay.
But
One.
it's available on YouTube. I found it there without subtitles, so I think that
Super.
it's difficult to understand the African American community language from that time.
Absolutely, absolutely. I went to South Carolina for some years to work and study, and the first weeks were awful because I couldn't understand a thing at the very beginning. It is a different accent in particularly southern states. So yeah, but you get used to it, right? Eventually. Thank you so much. I'll see you next week. I have another class, and I'm sure you have other things to do.
Yes,
Thank you again.
Yes, thank you.
You'll take care.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you.
Have a
Thank
nice
you for your
day.
great work.
Bye.
You too. Thank you very much. I'll stop recording now.
Bye.
Bye.